Today's podcast is sponsored by Grappa Restaurant, 22 Railroad Avenue, Warwick, New York. We have outdoor seating, indoor seating, upstairs bar, fantastic food and ambience. Come join us, Grappa Restaurant.
Hey everybody, John Alite, I'm back. And the next couple episodes I'm going to do is on the run. I'm going to start from the beginning, how it started, and walk you through all the events, all the occurrences, all the information, the jails, and how I eventually was caught. And I'm going to talk about a series like Catch Me If You Can. I started about I would say about 1998, and I was on a compound in Allenwood, and there was about 20 guards running towards us. There was a group of us sitting in the yard, and we were all laughing and talking, and you know, when there's a fight or something, you see these the horns go off, and you hear all the guards running from every which way, and they're going towards some sort of altercation, whether it's a fight, whether it's a stabbing, whether it's an officer in trouble with an inmate, and we're all looking at each other. And one of the guys, you know, mostly, you know, the guys that are in there, the guys that we know from the street, and a lot of mob guys from different crews, and we're all laughing. And one of the guys looks at me and he says, "Maybe they're coming for you again." And we made a joke of it, and I go, "Yeah, right." And well, as they kept getting closer, everybody's laughing, saying, "Oh, they're really coming for you." And, you know, we're still joking about it, and I'm still not thinking they're coming for me. And eventually they surround me and tell me to get on the floor, and they cuff me, and they take me off to the hole. And I'm clueless why they're taking me to the hole. So as they're bringing me into the hole, this what they call SIS. His lieutenant is waiting at the solitary confinement cell, and he wants to talk to me. And I said, "What's up?" Obviously, right? And he says, "We're going to put you on your own wing of the solitary confinement floor." And I said, "What the fuck is going on?" He says, "I can't discuss that with you. This is, we don't want anybody talking to you. We have inmates talking to you, and the food was going to be delivered by lieutenants, not by trustees. So I wouldn't be able to get messages to anybody." So that's how it started. I was in a 24-hour lockup, for the people who don't know what solitary confinement is. And I'm in a single-man solitary confinement cell. I don't have a bunkie. And day in and night, I'm locked up. I'm not even getting my hour out. So there's a woman, Nancy Phillips, that was doing an investigative reporting piece about a case that was all over the media of a rabbi that kills Rabbi Newlander, who killed his wife. And they accused him of hiring me to kill her. Eventually that comes out, the truth, that he hired somebody else, and I was cleared of the case. But in that point in time, Nancy Phillips swore it was me, and she was doing a report, so I threatened writing her a letter to expose what was going on in my 24/7 lockup, that I would interview with her if she would run the story about what they're doing to me in here. Belly chaining me to chairs and different things that were going on that obviously doesn't go on with the average inmate. And meanwhile, my family hires for me. When I get my one call, I get a call every 30 days at that time. And we hire a firm out of Philadelphia, but he wasn't an experienced attorney. They were more of a white-collar law firm. My family didn't know any better. They hired him. When he came to see me, I knew he didn't know what he was talking about. I'm speaking to him, and I knew that his interpretation of the criminal law system wasn't experienced. So we spoke for a while. He wrote some letters to the Bureau of Prisons. He wrote letters to the DOJ, Department of Justice, where people don't know what the terminologies are, and asked why I'm being put in solitary confinement. Their answer after about 6 weeks was short and sweet. We cannot tell you what the investigation is about because it undermines the investigation, whether it's an internal, external investigation, period. And they signed that letter. My lawyer eventually comes back up to see me again, and we discuss it. At that point, I knew that I was the way I was treated. You knew it wasn't anything but serious cases, whether RICO, murder cases, and informants that were giving me up. The treatment, by the way you're being treated, you can tell that it's something more on a serious level. By the end of 1998, they let me back out of solitary confinement, and I jumped in a fight for an Italian guy, Joe Mecca, that was being jumped. When I jumped in, we all went back to the hole. From that point, I was released from solitary confinement to home. My sentence was finished. They had to release me. They tried to keep me in the hole because I guess they're trying to charge me with a new crime. Like I said, a murder, RICO, and I knew I had pending things out there because of my past history. When I do hit the streets, I go to Philadelphia to Broad Street halfway house. And at that halfway house was a load of guys that were at the halfway house. I know all the Philly guys. I lived down in that area for a while now too, so I used to shoot back and forth from New York homes. I had several houses in New York, in Manhattan, in Queens, in Princeton, New Jersey, South Jersey. I had houses in Ventnor, Margate, also in Voorhees and Cherry Hill. So I chose to put down my resident in Voorhees, what made me go to the halfway house at Broad Street. I was there with Ronnie Turchi Sr., who was a one-time concierge of the Philadelphia mob, very friendly with me. And while I was there, I noticed when I left, I was being followed. And when you're being followed, people think you're paranoid. They say, why would they be following you? You just got out of jail, or what can they possibly have on you? You came out of prison. But I knew it was something significant because I just got out of jail and I already had tails on me. So again, I knew I had informants on me, somebody giving me up for something, and several people giving me up. After my time in the halfway house is over, and I spent very little time in the halfway house. Actually, one of the guys that was running, I gave him season tickets to the 76er games. So I never actually stayed there. They reported me as being in the halfway house. I'd show up here and there just so somebody saw my face, and I would sleep at home or a hotel. And I was moving around like that. And several months later, I get hit with a subpoena to, they say I'm not the target. I'm just the subject of a multi-murder investigation indictment of several guys. And one of them was involved Ronnie One-Arm, Joe O'Kane, and a couple other guys. So with that subpoena, I went to see Ronnie Rubenstein. Rubenstein was Ronnie One-Arm's attorney. So I went to see him. I sat down with him, and we discussed the subpoena and what they're trying to get. Ronnie One-Arm called the law firm. I wanted him to be there at the time, but he wouldn't come. At that time, me and Ronnie started having different falling outs, and they talked at one time, and he asked me for a favor to hit Scott Schumann, who was a friend of mine, and I got very verbally aggressive against him. And Ronnie's, for the people who know, did an opening statement against me, saying I was a loose cannon, a rogue, and somebody that if he wasn't nice to me, I'd kill him like everybody else. So mine and Ronnie's relationship soured. I ended up robbing a couple of his guys. Cousin Bobby, one of his bookmaking guys, I robbed him, tied him up, beat him. I robbed another kid, Croce, another one of his bookmakers. I robbed him and his partner in the Bonanno family, another skipper, of 1,000 pounds of weed. And I let him know I did it. It wasn't that I didn't let him know. I was getting aggressive against him for money that he owed from bookmaking business to my father while I was in prison. So from there, it just, compounded some of my problems with law enforcement and also on the street. Um, and I went from there to yelling at him and screaming at him at Ronnie Rubenstein's office, and I abused Ronnie Rubenstein also for not being forthright on what's going on with the case and asking me questions. And I said, "You're asking me questions, I'll ask you guys questions." And I started being aggressive about Ronnie One-Arm's gun. He got locked up a couple years early with a gun case that he never went to jail for, and it disappeared, and he did it, I don't believe, a couple of months only, and I don't know if it was from bail or it didn't make sense. The case didn't make sense, and I was questioning if he was the informant. At that point, I went into the grand jury, and I brought a couple of guys that were friends with me at the time. I brought some of my crew, and I said to stay, outside the courtroom, and they weren't allowed in, obviously. They asked me questions, and I took the fifth, back and forth, and then I gave my name, and they were trying to pressure me, and took me off the stand and said they were going to bring me back again. And if I wasn't forthright, I'd be a suspect also, and a target in the investigation, which not sure if that was ever going to come to fruition or not. A couple of months later, I get hit with another case with a guy, Charlie Ray, that was a friend of Danny Marino, who was a skipper with the Gambino family. He comes into Allenwood with the blessings of Danny. We checked him out by calling Danny's house, spoke to his wife about okaying him, and he got very friendly with guys in prison, one Nino Polavecchio, and different guys that he spoke to that were in Allenwood. These guys started discussing with Charlie Ray a plan that we put together. When I went home, I would be working with one of the guards to bring these guys food, sperm kits, wine, lobster, and I told him before we left, do not speak to him, Charlie, about what you're doing. Well, like most street guys, mob guys, they can't keep their mouth shut, and they bragged to him, and Charlie Ray set the whole jail up with a woman that he brought to the prison that was actually an agent going undercover, saying she was his wife, and they also wanted to arrange something with sperm kits so she can get pregnant. So while I'm on the street, I'm under investigation. My house, later on we find out, my house phones were tapped, which I kind of caught the guys on a pole, and I wasn't sure exactly how that works, like in the movies. Do they got to come in the pole? Do they got to come into your house? But anyway, it was verified later on. I hired private investigators that they tapped my phones. They bugged my house. They bugged one of my apartments. I'm assuming they bugged my car. I don't recall if we talked about that or if I just didn't check because I knew everything else was being tapped and bugged. And we spoke, and I hired several different investigators. One woman, this woman Diane, that I got from Mike Pinsky, and we discussed how many informants we think are giving me up because of what's going on the last couple of years. So we know the list of informants was growing at this time. In about 2000, I had several agencies following me in New York, in Philadelphia area, in Florida. We go down to Florida and we stay on the water at a hotel there, and we had we usually get 2 or 3 rooms adjoining so we can open the doors, and I go down with a group of guys, and we forgot something in my room, and our room back door opens to the pool. It's to the pool and to the ocean, and we tried to get in and we couldn't get in, and I sent one of the guys around the back because we were trying to get in. We knew something was wrong, and the agents ran out of the back part of the room through the pool, through the beach side, jumped in a car, took off. They were bugging my room in Florida. I was down there with a friend of mine, Frankie, who's still around, another guy, Mike, and somebody else, I don't remember else, was with us at the time. So now I know they're really on me in every state, from New York to New Jersey, Philadelphia, and Florida. And in 2000, about a couple months after this, they raided my apartment, my house, my property, with about 10 agents, armed obviously, on my rooftops. I had a lot of dogs at the time, so they climbed up on my rooftops because one of my Rottweilers bit one of the marshals or one of the agents. I'm not sure which one he bit, one of them, Spanish guy. And I happened to be in the room with, we all went out one night in Deptford. I was with a guy, Pat Kelly, who's a friend of mine. Another guy, Nicky, also tough kid, young guy, who's in and out of trouble, his brother, and was one of their friends. They cuffed me, and it was the winter time, and I'm thinking I'm getting cuffed for some sort of murder or RICO case, but I'm not. They charged me with bribery of a guard in the prison, and at that time the guard tried to call my house at 2 in the morning, speak to my father, try to get him on a tap. He was cooperating with the government. Not only was he cooperating, there was 5 or 6 other guards that were all corrupt also, but they never worked with me. I don't know what they were doing. There was a guy, Swineford, he was working with other guys. One of the guys he was working with was Johnny Gons, who was a Philly guy, tough guy, who ends up getting killed later on before I actually go on the run. We met at David Buster's in Philadelphia on Delaware Avenue. We discussed some of my problems, some of the problems I thought he had. We switched necklaces. He liked my necklace. I gave him mine, and I took his. When he was murdered, he was wearing my necklace, and we both parted our ways, shaking hands and saying we'll talk to each other soon again, but that never happened after I took off and he gets killed. So when I get pinched for that, it's the Charlie Ray that was giving up the prison system. Everybody in the prison. I think there was, all 5 families were there. Different mob crews, the Jersey crew, Philadelphia guys. I mean, and there was probably 4, 5, 6 dozen guys who were all locked up. Everybody was there, maybe more. Were put into solitary confinement and accused of corrupting Allenwood prison. The warden was Zelinsky was her name, an alcoholic. She lost control of the prison, and between all of us, we had different groups of guys that were moving different guards for different things. And, like most guys, we only worry about what we're doing. We don't ask questions what somebody else is doing. You're not privy to it unless you're involved in that scheme. There's nothing to talk about. Nobody asks questions about what they're doing with somebody else, who they're doing it with. Nobody cares. Everybody's making their own moves, whether it's for food, whether it's for cell phones, whether it's for drugs, whether it's for, alcohol, whether it was for other things, getting packages in and out, mail, letters that you're sending out to, your guys, whether you're sending out cryptid letters to hurt somebody, kill somebody. I mean, we all had our reasons for whatever we're doing. But when that pinch comes down and I try to get a bail, I eventually get a bail. I know something bigger is happening because I go out in the hallway and there's other agents and they're arguing. And later on I find out again through investigators that they didn't want these guys to pinch me for the sperm and the food and the bribery of a police officer. They wanted me on the street because they're trying to pinch me for a RICO case and murders in Florida, and they were also trying to pinch me for armed robberies and murders in New York and Philadelphia. So these agents were banging heads with each other because they were against, to them it was a small-time pinch, the bribery of these guards. As that case goes on, I go to jail for months, I don't remember, 3, 4 months. maybe 5 months. I think I had to go to a state facility first for about a month. I really don't know why I had to do that, but they put me in a state facility somewhere in Philly. I think they were overcrowded or something, and they wanted me off the street because of the information they had of the violence. And they had information that I was supposed to try to hit somebody else, and that, again, was through another informant. And who that person was that I was supposed to hit is, I'm still bewildered by it. I don't know who that is and who said I was hitting somebody else, but they had an informant said that. And I went from there and went back to prison. I believe I went to Loretto that time. While I was in Loretto, I met some guys, got friendly with them. I helped one of them in a fight. And unbeknownst to me, they were pretty connected cartel guys from Colombia. And they asked me if they can help me with anything, I would. And I says, well, I'm pretty sure I'm going to take off. After I get out of here, they're going to hit me with some sort of cases or several cases. And I said, so they gave me some telephone numbers to stay in touch and told me when I do go, contact one of these numbers. They'll contact somebody else and they'll make arrangements to meet me when I come over to Colombia, get myself to Colombia, to Santa Marta, Cartagena, that area, which I ended up dropping in Barranquilla for the people that know Colombia. After I get out of prison from this case, I get out and I go on house arrest for about 3 or 4 months, pending a violation because of this case, and I was on parole for other cases at the time, from when I got out of jail from the assault and gun case I was in prison with. So when I get out, I go back on the violation to Fort Dix, and I believe that was around 2001 or 2. And again, I spent maybe 3, 4 months, 5 months in Fort Dix. And in Fort Dix, I end up coming home, and I know immediately I have to see different people, and I hire an investigator again, right off the rip, as soon as I come home. And I said, he's got to find out what the hell's going on. I have a lot of police in my pocket that are working with me, that actually doing some of them, which I guess if you watch my podcast, you'll know I've done some murders with. I did some armed robberies with other guys I bookmate with. They sold drugs with me. So I had the connections to put them on the street and try to find out if I'm going to be hit with cases. And eventually, a couple of months later, it comes back that I'm being investigated for 2, possibly 3 RICO cases. We knew one was coming out of Florida, from the Middle District of Tampa, which is the one I get hit with, and we noticed several investigations in New York and Philadelphia. So at this point, I go see an attorney. I see a Philadelphia attorney whose wife is a judge, and we sit down and we have a conversation about how many informants at that time does he think, from talking to my investigator, is against me, and what positions in the mob are they. And so the information we could get at that time is several high-ranking mob informants. They didn't know if high-ranking meaning captain, concierge, or boss. They believed there was several maid guys and associates at that time that were also cooperating against me. At that time, the lawyer, as a lawyer, obviously I'm paying him to give me his assessment of what he thinks. And after going back and forth with him for a week or 2, he said to me, you have a lot of informants against you. We're not sure how many, but we think you have at least 12 to 2 at that time. And I said, how can we have that many guys? And he says, I'm just going by what your investigators are telling me, what your friends are telling you, and what information I gathered. And if you want my opinion, he says, I'll give you my recommendation. Cooperate. And I said, what? And he said, cooperate. I said, out of the question, that's not one of the options. I'm not going to cooperate. And he says, well, if you don't cooperate, I'm telling you, you're facing several life sentences. on several different RICO cases that are going to come at you. And I don't know your financial situation, but you're going to need a ton of money. You're going to need more than just me to handle these cases. And at that time, I had a ton of money. I had a parking company that was later taken from me. It was $17.6 million. I had a nightclub that was making $3 to $4 million. I had a bookmaking business that was making a couple million a year. I've owned properties all over every state, from Florida to New York to Philadelphia to New Jersey. Condominiums in Manhattan. So the money wasn't a problem for me. The way the money was coming in wasn't a problem for me. But obviously, you're not going to tell your lawyer you're cashed up all over and you have cash put away. But you tell them I'm okay money-wise. I can fight it. And I said, just keep digging into what's going on with me. And then I met some of the detectives I had in my pocket, and we discussed. One of them, I went to his house, and that's Phil Baroni, who was very close with me. Lived up the block from my house in Queens in Woodhaven. Later on, moved to Cherry Hill. He moved across the street from one of my houses in Cherry Hill. And I went to his house late at night, and I discussed with him what I was doing. And I said, I'm going to slowly start picking up payphones with numbers on it, and I'm going to use those payphones to stay in contact with you and my father. And whatever information you get, do not talk on your phones. Everybody knows we're close. And you can speak to my father, and I'll get messages to you. So I started to gather payphones from, and I didn't do it just localized. I did it from, my dad was a big gambler. He would go to Atlantic City a lot. I had a lot of connections in Atlantic City. I had a lot of the pit bosses, the president of Caesars. I'd go in the count rooms and the back rooms, and friends of ours, the Philadelphia guys, all know who he is because they were friends with him back in those days too. I had my other friend Joe that was running. I had some big gambler friends. My friend Eddie Leffler was he was a mountain, and he played like, he's passed away, and rest in peace to Eddie Leffler, a great friend. And so I had connections through him and through the casinos, through the penthouse suites, and planes and trips, and so he was a really good friend to me. So from Atlantic City to New Jersey, I was moving around, had the connections to be able to get around, and I start talking about how I'm going to move money if I go on the run. And after talking to some of these guys like Eddie Leffler and different guys, they said to open up a bank account in Canada. And Canada's a safe haven for me to do business through Canada to Cuba, because my ultimate goal was first destination, and possibly my last, was to stay in Cuba. So I put together, I don't remember, it was about 60 to 100,000, and I slowly start transferring that money into the Canadian bank system. And from the Canadian bank system, I'm going to siphon it across into Cuba. In the meantime, I call Albania, and I speak to some friends there, and I speak to my cousin in Albania, and I send some money that way. And so I have money stacked around the world at this point, from Canada and Albania. So I know that I can last on the run without contacting too many people, and I start cutting off a lot of the people around me, cousins and friends, and people I'm not sure who I could trust, or what mob guys are on my list as informants that I thought were maybe talking at that time. And I start thinking about what enemies and what guys that I hurt in the mob that have an agenda to get rid of me. Now, I knew at that time, we hurt some guys. We killed Johnny Gebbett at that time. That was around guys in the Gambino family. I robbed guys around Ronnie One-Arm. I robbed guys around the Bonanno family. So I knew, and I also knew that I gave Joe Messina information at that time, Frankie Copa, that he was bad. So at that point, I still don't know that Joe Messina is going to go bad in Warrawaya, but these are guys, I mean, all these guys are on my mind. Who could possibly be bad? And for the naive people, they're thinking just the associates and street guys, maybe it's them. But I've been around the street my whole life, and I realize the more powerful you are, the more you don't want to go to jail, the more that you probably have hooks to talk and give information without anybody knowing it's you. So guys like Joe Messina, when he went bad, and he's wearing a wire against Vinny Gorgeous and some of his crew get indicted, it didn't surprise me like it surprises most guys. It didn't surprise me at all, actually, because if you look through history, you'll see a lot of these guys that are in major positions are the ones giving up information and working both sides, no different than Whitey Bulger. And people know Whitey Bulger because of the movie, The Departed, and different things, but there's guys in every crew that's been doing this. So from that point of me moving money and me realizing who could be cooperating, and my connections with the police and my investigators, me being locked up constantly in and out of jail for bullshit cases, violations, anything to keep me tied up in the system, is usually a telltale sign that besides me catching them in different sting operations against me. And they tried another one with another agent with my parking company. He pulled up with yachts and he had a meeting with me on the water in Tampa, and we caught him in lies, and he straight out said, you can use a friend. I said, I got enough friends. And so we knew there was too many different types of sting operations against me, them trying to tap anything I was at, cars and hotels and houses, that something serious is on the horizon. And I first make my move, and I start getting those telephone numbers and locations from Jersey to Philadelphia to Princeton area, and I list the phones by numbers from 1 to 20, and I give them to my father. Stay tuned. Next week, I'll finish part 2 of Catch Me If You Can. John Alite on the run. Good?
Yeah, do you need, how much time do you need in between?
1 minute, it's gonna change it.
Just run. I'll keep running.
Yeah, just tell me
I'm
what
gonna
it's-
get exact, so that you don't have to overdo it.
Yeah.
You just did like nice 30, 35 minutes, easy. Have you do it again,
Yeah.
or a second. I'll have you do 3 today.
Okay.
So we, then you might have to, you'll come in at least once before you leave. Honestly, if you come in once and you knock out a fuck ton,
Alright.
but at least now you'll have 3. Well, let's see, 3 this week. Yeah, you're gonna need since you're gonna go away, you're gonna need 5 or 6 banked up.
Yeah.
So you either come in once or twice, but bring that. Yeah, good. Keep doing your thing.
Alright. Hey, this is John Alite again. I'm back. Catch Me If You Can on the Run, short series. I left off last week with discussing telephones and numbers and payphones that I'm going to leave for my father. So when I'm on the run, I can tell him go to phone booth number 2 at 8 o'clock on Saturday, and he knows I'm going to ring him up. I didn't want to do too many local phones of where he lived, because when things get really hot, I know the agents will start tapping those phones or check those phones to see what locations he's going to. And since he's an Atlantic City guy and a gambler, it was a regular routine for him to go down to AC. Sometimes he drives, sometimes he go to Echo train station and take it straight into AC. So I would go in that area also, and I gave him phones there. In the Princeton area, we would go for lunch. It was a quiet area. We'd go for lunch, and so I gave him 2 phones down in that area, and with instructions not to tell anybody in my family I'm leaving, that I'm ready to go. Just getting a couple final things in order. So I went from giving those lists of phones, getting money sent to Albania, getting money sent to Canada, reaching a friend of mine in Cuba, and started reaching out to different friends in other countries. And I reached out to Klaus's people, who was known to be my partner over the years, since the early 90s, and for connections from him in Spain, Barcelona, Denmark, Germany, Amsterdam, and some of the areas that he could help me if I had to go to those areas. So I'm starting to set up my network of people that I have in other countries, so I can be able to move around a little easier before I decide to take off for that final day. At that time, I'm dating a young girl, and I said to her, and she has no idea also, I'm not telling anybody what my plans are. And I said to her, hey, you want to go to St. Lucia? And she didn't know why St. Lucia, but I said, I heard they got a good resort there. I said, let's go to a resort, we'll go on vacation for a week, and we'll leave from Florida. You know, she had a mother living down in Florida, so it was a perfect excuse. I didn't want to leave out of New York or New Jersey or Philadelphia because I didn't want to tip anybody if there were local people watching me that I'm leaving out of these ports and maybe thinking I'm on the run, that I got in the wind. Instead, I was very, I spread the word purposely on phones, to friends, people I didn't really trust, that I was going to St. Lucia on vacation at a resort. So it gave me an excuse if I got caught bringing, because I brought another 50 or 60,000 with me on vacation. But that was my excuse. If they catch me and I'm going on vacation, I carried a couple bags of, actually I brought 2 big duffel bags of clothes, which was the only thing. I had a lot of clothes for a short trip that I was a little worried about. And this is after 9/11, so, you know, the scrutiny of flying was a little more intense. And I booked the flight to Aruba. I get a limousine, and I take a limousine down to Florida. And I forget who I hired. It was somebody I knew, and they charged me a couple of grand, 2 or 3,000, to drive me down to Florida by limo. And from limo, I got my passport on an overnight basis. I think it was 2 or 3 days. If you say you need a passport, and I was trying to, and you pay some extra money, you got to show a plane ticket, which I did. And I booked a flight from Florida, and we flew to St. Lucia. And when I'm going through the detectives was the only problem, because I had a ton of money on me. But it never showed up for whatever reason. And I got through the airport, and I was in the wind. But prior to going in the wind, I went to my nightclub. I had a club called Moet's at the time. We changed the name to Mirage. And that was also in Florida. I owned a building down there at the time. I owned a house down there. At one time, I had several clubs down there prior to Mirage and Moet's. I had American Cowboy with my partner Cam, who passed away, and he's my original partner in the club Moet's. I actually was trying to bring in my friend Stevie from Philly at that time. He took a pass on it, but he came down to meet me to look at the club. And it was a pretty big club, about 22,000 square feet, in a self-standing building in the Friday Shopping Center in Del Mabry in Hillsborough, for the people that know the Tampa area. And the club was well known as the hottest club in Tampa for about 10 years. I had the Tampa Bay Bucks that would be in my club on a regular basis. You had the Fighter, Jeff Lacey in there, and Winky Wright, and some good guys used to come in. So I started getting the celebrities from when they were out of Miami and they were in the Tampa, Orlando area. They'd shoot down to my club, and it was, you know, several lounges and champagne lounges, and it was a pretty hot club, Spanish Black Club. So I went to my club. I set some rules up with the guys that were running my club about what to do with money. I don't tell them I'm running. I just tell them I'm going to be moving around. I got some business in different areas of vacation. And I set a little system up to somebody to pick up my money, somebody to send money, and somebody to send some money to my other partners. And my other partner, Mike. And naturally, the first couple months, things are good until they realize you're in the wind. And then they're going to play with your money. And then one of my partners started, there was another guy that started giving information to the FBI, the guy Jimmy. And he goes to one of my other partners, Frankie Sealy, and he says, we're getting pressure at the club. The FBI keeps coming in looking for John. Just give up John like everybody else. And who cares? Fuck him. Now this is a guy that had very little money in the club at the time. He ran a good club, and Frankie Sealy tells him, no, I'm not doing that. And Jimmy gets an investigator and tries to get the investigator to talk to Frankie Sealy and get Frankie Sealy to give up information on me also. And Frankie Sealy refuses. Says, no, I'm not going against him. I'm not giving him up. At the time, I had a couple of cousins that I knew wouldn't go on the run with me, so I knew I couldn't trust them anymore. And one of them is a guy, Billy Queso, that was around the Genovese family. He was around, he's been around me, and then he went around them. And I knew that we couldn't trust him. His partner was another guy, Chris Castellano, one later on gets killed. I believe he got caught with a cocaine case and was informing. He got out, and I believe he was killed because they knew he was informing. Yet, I warned them prior to that. I warned Tony, I warned Tony's guys, and these guys were around Tony, and my cousin also around Rem, who just went away. How they didn't get caught up, because I know these guys are all giving information against me, I don't know. Because these guys were directly involved with them in a lot of things, obviously in the drug business, because my cousin was huge in the drug business. And he was one of the bigger informants against me. And he's one of the guys that didn't surprise me, because I knew that he was a big guy, but I knew he wouldn't hold his he wouldn't hold himself, it doesn't matter. I knew he was going to talk, which he did. So I had some issues with some of these guys because they took them in over money, and I had bigger problems. And I was trying to figure out who I could trust. So it couldn't be